Marvel. The Ancient One comes to the door, will he sound the thunder to keep him alive? Chapter 41. He is indeed a cunning person. Don't move. Lin Feng shouted sternly, his eyes showing determination and deterrence. Several people in the laboratory were startled by the sudden attack, but they quickly calmed down and were obviously trained. Natasha calmly stepped forward, took out a small device, connected it to the main control computer, and started downloading data. Bruce was checking the instruments on the side, trying to find clues to the emotion controller. Lin Feng remained vigilant to ensure that no one else broke in. Hurry up, we don't have much time. Lin Feng urged in a low voice, feeling a little nervous. Natasha operated quickly, and rows of complex data were displayed on the screen. Her brows gradually furrowed, this is wrong, the data seems to be encrypted. Try this, Bruce handed her a USB device. This is the decryption tool I prepared before. It should be able to break these encryptions. Natasha took the USB device, quickly plugged it into the computer, and opened the Shikai password. After a few minutes, a detailed experimental report finally appeared on the screen. Found it, Natasha said, this is their experimental record. It seems that they are not only studying emotion controllers, but also developing a new energy source that can be enhanced by controlling emotions. Lin Feng was shocked, this is so crazy. They want to use human emotions to create energy? Bruce nodded, yes, if such technology is abused, the consequences will be disastrous. At this moment, there was a sound of footsteps outside, and it was obvious that an enemy was aware of their invasion. Lin Feng quickly stood up and prepared to fight. We have to get out of here quickly. Lin Feng said, Natasha, have you downloaded all the data? Natasha nodded, it's done. Let's go. The three people quickly evacuated the laboratory, and when walking through the corridor, they met several heavily armed guards. Lin Feng did not hesitate, took action quickly, and started a fierce fight with the guards. Natasha and Bruce also used their own skills and cooperated with Lin Feng to repel the enemy. When they finally escaped from the factory, Lin Feng felt both relaxed and more determined. He knew that this was just a beginning, and there were more challenges waiting for them ahead. But no matter what, he will not give up, because this is the mission he must complete. After leaving the factory, the three found a safe place to rest temporarily. They sorted out the information they had just obtained and discussed their next plan. We must stop them and not let this technology fall into the wrong hands. Natasha said firmly. Lin Feng nodded, yes, we need more support and resources. Next, we must find more allies. Bruce agreed, I will contact other scientists and superheroes, they will definitely be willing to help us. Lin Feng felt a new hope ignited in his heart. He knew that with these powerful partners, they would be able to defeat the enemy, find their parents, and solve all the mysteries. Lin Feng, Natasha and Bruce continued to search for new clues in the city. They know that the enemy's conspiracy is far from over, and they must remain vigilant at all times. That night, the three of them were discussing the next step of action at the top of a tall building. The breeze blew gently, bringing a bit of coolness. Lin Feng looked at the city lights in the distance, silently thinking about his next strategy. We need to find more information about that energy source, Natasha said, and it must be as soon as possible. The enemy may have already begun to implement their plan. Bruce nodded in agreement, we should look for some well-known scientists and experts. They may have more information. Lin Feng was thinking when he suddenly felt a strong premonition someone was nearby and very close. He quickly became alert and looked around, but found nothing unusual. At this moment, a red and blue figure quickly fell from the sky and rushed directly towards Lin Feng. Hey, be careful! Lin Feng shouted, but it was too late. He felt a strong impact, and his whole body was knocked out and hit the wall next to him heavily. Pain instantly swept through his body, but he quickly adjusted his posture, stood firm, and prepared to fight back. I'm sorry. I thought you were enemies. A young voice came from the air, and the man fell to the ground quickly, it was Spider-Man. He looked a little embarrassed, obviously misunderstanding the identities of Lin Feng and the others. Natasha quickly stepped forward and stood in front of Lin Feng, looking at Spider-Man warily. Peter, this is Lin Feng, our friend. He is not an enemy. Spider-Man scratched his head, looking a little embarrassed. I'm really sorry. I just saw you here and thought it was an enemy ambush. Lin Feng rubbed his injured shoulder and forced a smile. It's okay, Peter. We need you to join us now, there's something important to do. A look of seriousness and concern immediately appeared on Spider-Man's face. Sure, what happened? Natasha quickly briefed Spider-Man on their situation, including the enemy's plot and emotional control. After hearing this, Spider-Man's expression became more serious. So, we have to take action immediately. This energy source sounds too dangerous to let the bad guys succeed. Spider-Man said firmly. Lin Feng felt a sense of warmth. Although he had been accidentally injured just now, the addition of Spider-Man undoubtedly made their team stronger. He glanced at Peter gratefully, and his inner determination became stronger. Thank you, Peter. Next, we need to look for more clues. According to the information we have, the enemy may have more than one experimental base, and we must find other bases as soon as possible. Lin Feng said. Bruce interjected, I suggest that we divide into 2 groups, which will be more efficient. Peter, you and Natasha will be in a group to investigate clues in the North District. Lin Feng and I are in charge of the South District. Spider-Man nodded in agreement. Okay, this allocation is very reasonable. We will maintain communication and report the situation at any time. Natasha also agreed. No problem, let's go. Everyone, be careful. The 2 groups quickly split up, and Lin Feng and Bruce headed toward the South District along the dim streets. Along the way, various possible scenarios kept popping up in Lin Feng's mind. He knew that time was running out and he had to race against time. Lin Feng, are you okay? Bruce asked with concern, obviously noticing Lin Feng's injury just now. Chapter 42. Why should we ally with him? It's okay, it's just a flesh wound. Lin Feng shook his head, his eyes showing determination. We have to find clues as soon as possible, we can't waste time. Bruce nodded and moved on. The 2 came to an abandoned warehouse, which seemed unusually quiet, with only the slightest sound caused by the breeze. Lin Feng and Bruce entered the warehouse cautiously and looked around. This place seems to have been cleaned up without leaving many traces. Lin Feng whispered, his eyes quickly scanning around. Bruce nodded, yes, but maybe we can still find some clues. The 2 began to carefully search every corner of the warehouse. Suddenly, Lin Feng found some strange symbols next to an old wooden box. He gently touched these symbols with his fingers and felt a weak energy fluctuation. Bruce, come here and take a look at this. Lin Feng shouted, and Bruce came over immediately. Bruce observed these symbols carefully and frowned slightly. These symbols look like ancient technological symbols, which may be related to that energy source. We have to take it back and let Natasha and Peter take a look. They may know more. Lin Feng suggested. Bruce agreed, took a photo of the symbol and saved it, and then the 2 quickly left the warehouse and returned to the meeting point. At the same time, Natasha and Spider-Man also made some progress in the North District investigation. They found some remnants of equipment in an abandoned laboratory, apparently devices used to control emotions. After careful inspection, Spider-Man confirmed that these devices were very similar to the emotion controllers described by Bruce. It seems we have found something useful. Natasha said, with a glimmer of hope in her heart. Spider-Man nodded, yes, these devices may help us find the specific location of the energy source. After the 2 groups reunited, Lin Feng and Bruce showed the symbols they found, and Natasha and Spider-Man also shared their findings. After some discussion, they decided to integrate these clues and try to decipher the enemy's plan. Lin Feng looked at these symbols, filled with hope and determination. He knew that although this road was full of unknown dangers, as long as they worked together, they would be able to find the truth and stop the enemy's conspiracy. In the dead of night, the 4 of them temporarily rested in a secret place, waiting for the arrival of dawn. Lin Feng lay on the hard ground, staring at the ceiling, thinking a lot. He knew that the next action would be more dangerous and would require greater preparation. He decided to purchase some necessary equipment early the next morning, just in case. In the early morning, just after dawn, Lin Feng quietly stood up, gently pushed the gate of opening, and walked out of his hiding place. He made a list in his mind and needed some basic combat equipment and communication tools to ensure that they could stay in touch and respond to emergencies at any time during operations. He walked into a hidden military equipment store. The owner was a middle-aged man who looked very experienced, with a shrewd light in his eyes. Lin Feng knew that he could find what he needed here, but he had to proceed with caution. Good morning, what do you need? The shop owner asked in a calm tone, but his eyes were carefully looking at Lin Feng. Lin Feng nodded, lowered his voice and said, I need some special equipment to be as hidden and efficient as possible. The shop owner smiled slightly, obviously accustomed to such demand. Come with me. Lin Feng followed the shop owner to the back of the shop, where a variety of equipment was displayed. From night vision devices to high-precision communication equipment, we have it all. Lin Feng carefully selected some necessary items, including a high-tech communicator, a lightweight but powerful pistol, and some protective equipment. These should be enough. Lin Feng said, while handing over a stack of cash. The shopkeeper took the money and nodded with satisfaction. "Good luck to you, young man." Lin Feng left the equipment store, feeling a little more at ease. He knew that the next action would be more dangerous, but with these equipment, he at least increased his chances of winning. He quickly returned to his hiding place and distributed the equipment to Natasha, Bruce and Peter. "These equipment can help us better cope with the next challenges," Lin Feng said, explaining the purpose of each piece of equipment. Natasha nodded, took the equipment, and showed a smile of approval. "You did a good job, Lin Feng. We need this equipment to ensure safety." Peter looked a little excited, looking around with a high-tech communicator. "These things are so cool. I've never seen them before." Bruce also felt reassured. "These equipment will make us more prepared." Lin Feng smiled slightly. Although he was still a little nervous, he felt that the team's strength was growing. Everyone trusts each other and faces unknown dangers together, which makes him full of strength. Just as they were preparing to set off, Lin Feng suddenly felt an uneasy atmosphere. He turned around quickly and saw a dark figure flashing between the buildings nearby. His instinct told him that there might be enemies following them. "Everyone, be careful, someone is following us," Lin Feng whispered, his eyes becoming sharp. Natasha immediately became alert. "We need to move, we can't stay here for too long." Bruce and Peter also quickly entered a state of alert. They followed Lin Feng and quickly passed through several alleys, trying to get rid of the following enemies. However, the dark shadow followed closely and refused to let go. Lin Feng was secretly anxious. They had to find a way to get rid of this tail, otherwise more information would be exposed. He had an idea and decided to lure the enemy into a more hidden place and then wait for an opportunity to counterattack. "Follow me, let's go over there." Lin Feng pointed to an abandoned factory in the distance. The terrain there was complicated, and it was a good place for counterattack. The four people moved quickly and entered the abandoned factory. Lin Feng was thinking in his mind, using the terrain here to set up traps and lure the enemy into the encirclement. He directed Natasha and Peter to disperse, while Bruce was responsible for monitoring the enemy's movements. Not long after, the black shadow really came after him. Lin Feng held his breath and waited quietly. When the black shadow entered the trap range, he decisively sent out a signal, and Natasha and Peter immediately surrounded him from both sides, surrounding the black shadow in the center. "Don't move. You are already surrounded," Lin Feng shouted sharply, pointing the weapon in his hand at the black shadow. The black shadow stopped and raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. Lin Feng and Natasha quickly stepped forward and controlled him. Lifting the mask of the black shadow, he discovered that it was a young man with a trace of fear and uneasiness in his eyes. Chapter 43. The Power of Temptation. "Who are you? Why are you following us?" Lin Feng asked coldly. The man swallowed his saliva, his voice trembling. "I'm just a spy, sent to monitor your whereabouts. I don't know much, I'm just following orders." Natasha frowned. "Who sent you here? What is their purpose?" The man looked even more nervous. "I don't know who it is, I just know that they have great power and want to control that energy source. I'm really just a small character, please don't kill me." Lin Feng looked at Natasha, and she nodded to express her understanding. Lin Feng took a deep breath and decided to let the spy go for the time being and continued to trace the forces behind it. "We won't kill you, but you must tell us more information," Lin Feng said, with a hint of deterrence in his eyes. The man breathed a sigh of relief and began to provide some clues he knew. Through this information, Lin Feng and the others gradually pieced together a more complete picture. The enemy's power was greater than they imagined. After leaving the abandoned factory, Lin Feng and his team moved on, filled with new hope and determination. They know that the road ahead will be more difficult and dangerous, but as long as they work together, they will be able to overcome all difficulties, find the truth, and stop the enemy's conspiracy. Lin Feng and Bruce, Hulk, decided to split up to find more clues faster. They left their hiding place and embarked on a new journey. Bruce acted as an ordinary person during the day, while Lin Feng continued to use his special abilities to find possible hiding places for enemies. That evening, the two came to an abandoned ancient church. The outer walls of the church are Madara modeled, exuding an atmosphere of mystery and majesty. Lin Feng felt that there seemed to be some important secret hidden here, while Bruce noticed some abnormal energy fluctuations around him. "Lin Feng, I feel a powerful energy fluctuation here, which may be some kind of device of the enemy," Bruce whispered, with caution in his eyes. Lin Feng nodded and glanced around. "Let's go in and take a look. Maybe we can find some clues." The two of them cautiously entered the church. The air around them seemed to be stagnant, giving people a depressing feeling. Suddenly, a deep female voice came from the depths of the church, full of mystery and power. Who is invading my territory here? The voice echoed in the empty church, making people shudder. Lin Feng and Bruce looked at each other and then walked towards the source of the sound. Soon, they saw a woman wearing a black robe in the center of the church, with a stern face and a mysterious light shining in her eyes. She is a witch with powerful magical power. Who are you? Why did you break into this place? The witch asked coldly, her hands glowing with blue light, obviously preparing to defend or attack. Lin Feng took a step forward and kept calm. We have no malicious intent, we just want to find some clues. There seem to be some unusual energy fluctuations here, and we suspect it is related to the enemy's experiments. The witch narrowed her eyes and looked at Lin Feng and Bruce carefully, as if judging whether their words were true or false. Her eyes rested on Bruce for a moment, obviously recognizing him. Hulk, your power is indeed extraordinary, but things here have nothing to do with you. Leave, or you will be responsible for the consequences. The witch's voice was full of threats. Bruce took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. We don't want to be your enemy, but we must find those clues. The enemy's experiments are not just against us, they target the entire world. Lin Feng also took a step forward, we just need some information. If you can help us, we are willing to exchange anything you need. The witch was silent for a moment, with a trace of hesitation flashing in her eyes. Clearly, she was not completely indifferent. Finally, she spoke slowly, okay, I can tell you something, but you must promise not to interfere with my magic ritual. Lin Feng and Bruce nodded in agreement. The witch waved her hand, and a blue light formed a light curtain in the air in front of her. A complex pattern was displayed on the light curtain. This is a location in the enemy's experimental base, the witch said. They are using the energy here to conduct some kind of dangerous experiments. I am also investigating these things. Lin Feng looked at the patterns on the light screen carefully and gradually understood. Thank you, witch. This is very helpful to us. The witch nodded and waved her hand to make the light curtain disappear. Remember your promise not to interfere with my magic ritual. After Lin Feng and Bruce thanked him, they quickly left the church and continued their pursuit. After leaving the church, Lin Feng felt that he had more confidence in his heart. They now had a clearer goal. Next, let's go to the experimental base and see what clues we can find. Lin Feng said, with determination in his eyes. Bruce nodded in agreement. Yes, we must hurry up. The sooner the enemy's experiment is stopped, the better. The two acted quickly and headed towards the target location on the map. After several hours of travel, they came to a hidden valley where the environment was quiet, but huge dangers were hidden. It seems very quiet here, but I feel an unusual atmosphere permeating the air. Lin Feng whispered, observing the surroundings vigilantly. Bruce frowned. Yeah, this doesn't feel right. We have to be more careful. They cautiously approached the depths of the valley and found a secret entrance hidden behind the rock wall. Lin Feng gently pushed open the entrance, and there was a narrow passage inside, with a faint light at the end of the passage. Let's go in and see what's inside. Lin Feng said, taking the lead to enter the passage. The walls on both sides of the passage were covered with strange symbols, which emitted a faint light, as if guiding them forward. Lin Feng felt his heart beat faster and knew that there might be important clues hidden ahead. When they finally reached the end of the passage, the sight in front of them shocked them. This turned out to be a huge underground laboratory, surrounded by various high-tech equipment. In the center was a huge machine, with a ball of energy shining with blue light suspended above the machine. This is their experimental device, Bruce whispered, a flash of anger in his eyes. We have to destroy it. Lin Feng nodded in agreement. Let's split up. I'll go find the control device, and you'll be responsible for protecting me. The two acted quickly. Lin Feng carefully observed the layout of the laboratory and looked for the location of the control device. Suddenly, a rush of footsteps came from deep in the passage. Apparently the enemy guards discovered their invasion. Chapter 44. Everything happens for a reason. Hurry up, they're coming. Bruce shouted, quickly transforming into the Hulk and preparing to fight. Lin Feng quickened his pace and finally found the control device in a corner. He quickly cracked the code and tried to shut down the experimental device. At the same time, the Hulk had started a fierce battle with the enemy guards. Hold on, I'm almost ready. Lin Feng shouted while operating. The Hulk roared and punched several guards to the ground, but the number of enemies seemed to be endless. Lin Feng was nervous in his heart, but the movements of his hands were even faster. Finally, the energy ball of the experimental device began to disappear gradually, and the machine stopped running. The Hulk breathed a sigh of relief and knocked the last enemy to the ground. He walked to Lin Feng and returned to Bruce's appearance. Good job, Lin Feng. We succeeded. Lin Feng smiled slightly and felt extremely relieved. They had destroyed an important enemy experimental base, but he knew that this was just the beginning and there were more challenges waiting for them ahead. After leaving the laboratory, Lin Feng and Bruce returned to a safe location again and met up with Natasha and Peter. They shared their findings and decided to continue working together to completely destroy the enemy's plan. Lin Feng, Bruce, Natasha and Peter reunited at a safe location and sorted out the information brought back from the enemy's experimental base. They knew that although an experimental base was destroyed, the enemy's conspiracy was far from over. Everyone is thinking about the next step. We must find other experimental bases and completely destroy their plans. Natasha spoke first, with a determined light in her eyes. According to this information, their next target seems to be an abandoned factory in the East District. Bruce flipped through the documents and pointed out a new target. Lin Feng pondered for a moment and suddenly felt that the energy in his body was abnormal. He stood up and walked aside, trying to concentrate on feeling the change. After a moment, a small black ball condensed in his hand. The black ball exuded weak energy fluctuations. "What is this?" Lin Feng murmured to himself, his eyes full of surprise and doubt. Peter came over and stared at the black ball intently. "This looks like some kind of energy body. Have you had such an ability before?" Lin Feng shook his head. "No, this feeling is strange, but I think this energy will help us." Natasha also walked over and observed the black ball carefully. "Maybe this is a sign of your ability to further awaken after experiencing those adventures. We can try it and see if we can use this energy." Lin Feng nodded and tried to channel the black ball's energy into their equipment. Following his thoughts, the black ball slowly merged into a communication device, and the device's signal became more stable and powerful. "It seems that your abilities are indeed increasing," Bruce sighed. "This is a huge help to our operations." Lin Feng was also full of hope. He knew that this new energy might be the key to defeating their enemies. He recondensed a black ball and distributed it to everyone's equipment to enhance their combat effectiveness. "Let's set off now and go to the abandoned factory in the East District to see what we can find," Lin Feng said firmly. The four people quickly packed up and set off towards the abandoned factory in the East District. Along the way, Lin Feng felt both hopeful and a little nervous. He knew that this mission would be more dangerous, but it was also an opportunity for self-breakthrough. As the night got darker, they finally arrived at the abandoned factory. The outer walls of the factory were covered with thick dust and looked particularly eerie. Lin Feng took the lead and walked in front, holding a small black ball in his hand to illuminate the road ahead for them. Entering the factory, there was silence all around, with only the occasional sound of wind passing through the dilapidated walls. Lin Feng felt a strange energy fluctuation in the air, which made him even more alert. "There are indeed unusual energy fluctuations here," Bruce whispered. "We must proceed with caution." They searched separately, trying to find the enemy's laboratory. Lin Feng walked to an abandoned office, pushed the gate of opening, and found that it was filled with various documents and instruments. He carefully looked through these documents, and suddenly his eyes lit up, and he found several maps, which marked the locations of several other experimental bases. "I found some maps with the locations of other experimental bases marked on them," Lin Feng said excitedly and hurriedly showed the map to everyone. Natasha took the map and after examining it carefully, a hint of joy flashed in her eyes. "This is so important to us. We can destroy the enemy's bases one by one based on these maps." As they continued to search for clues, a strong energy wave suddenly came from deep in the factory, followed by a violent vibration. Lin Feng reacted quickly and formed a larger black ball, preparing to deal with the coming danger. "Everyone, be careful, there is a strong enemy approaching," Lin Feng reminded in a low voice, his eyes becoming sharper. Soon, a tall figure appeared deep in the factory. His whole body exuded strong energy fluctuations. He was obviously a senior soldier of the enemy. This person's eyes were cold and locked on Lin Feng and the others. "How dare you break in here and seek death?" The man roared angrily and punched Lin Feng. Lin Feng quickly dodged and threw the black ball in his hand at the enemy. The black ball rotates rapidly in the air and finally hits the target, bursting out with strong energy fluctuations, knocking the enemy back a few steps. "Your ability is good, but not enough." The enemy stabilized his figure and charged forward again. Natasha and Peter also quickly joined the battle, using their respective skills to deal with the enemy. Bruce transformed into the Hulk, rushed towards the enemy, and knocked him to the ground. "We must deal with him as soon as possible, otherwise more enemies will come," Lin Feng shouted and continued to condense the black balls. After a fierce battle, they finally knocked the enemy to the ground and temporarily relieved the crisis. Lin Feng stood there panting, feeling the energy in his body gradually recover. We have to hurry up and get out of here as soon as possible," Natasha said, obviously realizing that the danger has not been completely eliminated. They quickly packed up the materials and equipment they found and left the abandoned factory. On the way back, Lin Feng felt relieved. Although the battle was full of dangers, they finally found more clues and were one step closer to uncovering the enemy's conspiracy. After leaving the abandoned factory, Lin Feng and his team returned to their temporary base. After a fierce battle, everyone seemed exhausted, but their hearts were still full of hope. They know that the next action will be more important, and they must seize the time to completely destroy the enemy's plan. Chapter 45. Combat Power Source. While sorting out the information brought back from the factory, Lin Feng noticed a strange object hidden in the corner of an old map, an ancient compass. The compass looked ordinary on the outside, but when he put his hand on it, he felt a strange energy fluctuation. "This compass seems a little unusual," Lin Feng murmured to himself, observing carefully. Peter came over and asked curiously, "What is this? It looks like some kind of antique." Bruce also walked over and looked at the compass carefully. "This seems to be no ordinary compass. I feel that it exudes some kind of energy." Natasha quickly found records about this compass from the data. According to these documents, this compass can guide us to find the enemy's experimental base. It is not only a direction indicator, but can also sense energy fluctuations. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. "So, this compass will be an important tool for our actions." Natasha nodded. "Yes, we can use it to find other hidden bases. Now all we need to do is interpret the compass's guidance." Lin Feng carefully placed the compass in the center of the table, concentrated on it, and felt its energy fluctuations. As his consciousness deepened, the compass needle began to rotate slowly, eventually pointing in one direction. "It seems we have a new goal," Lin Feng said, his heart full of anticipation and nervousness. Bruce nodded. "Then let's set off. Time waits for no one, and the enemy's plan may be implemented at any time." They quickly geared up and set off, following the guidance of the compass towards their new goal. Along the way, Lin Feng kept feeling the energy fluctuations from the compass, which filled his heart with confidence and strength. He knew that as long as they followed the compass, they would be able to find the enemy's experimental base. After driving for several hours, they came to a desolate mountainous area. The compass pointer pointed to the entrance of a hidden cave. The surrounding environment seemed particularly peaceful, but there was an aura of danger. "This is the place indicated by the compass," Lin Feng whispered, his eyes showing vigilance. Peter clenched his fists. "Let's go in, be careful." The four of them entered the cave cautiously. The surrounding air became colder and colder, as if there was some unknown danger hidden. A black ball condensed in Lin Feng's hand, lighting up the road ahead for them. Not long after walking, they discovered a hidden laboratory deep in the cave. The laboratory is fully equipped and is obviously an important base for the enemy. Lin Feng approached cautiously and carefully observed the surrounding environment. "The equipment here is much more advanced than what we have seen before," Natasha whispered. "It seems that this is one of their core bases." Just as they were preparing to investigate further, a strong energy wave suddenly came from the center of the laboratory, and then, a man wearing a black robe appeared in front of them. His eyes were cold and he was obviously one of the enemy's leaders. "You dare to break in here, you are really looking for death," the man in black robe said with a sneer, and a strong wave of energy condensed in his hand, attacking Lin Feng and the others. Lin Feng reacted quickly and condensed a black ball to resist the energy attack. Bruce transformed into the Hulk and roared towards the man in black robe. Peter and Natasha also quickly attacked. "We must deal with him as soon as possible," Lin Feng shouted and continued to release the black ball. The battle was extremely fierce, and the men in black robes were powerful, but Lin Feng and the others gradually gained the upper hand with their tacit cooperation. Lin Feng used the energy fluctuations of the compass to enhance his attack power and finally knocked the black-robed man to the ground in a violent impact. After the man in black robe fell to the ground, the equipment in the laboratory began to emit a piercing alarm sound, apparently activating the self-destruction program. Lin Feng quickly rushed to the console and tried to turn off the self-destruct program, but it was obviously too late. "We have to get out of here quickly," Natasha shouted, quickly leading everyone to retreat. The four people rushed out of the cave quickly, and there was a violent explosion behind them, and the entire experimental base was destroyed instantly. Lin Feng panted heavily, feeling both nervous and a little lucky in his heart. "Fortunately we evacuated in time, otherwise we would have been doomed." Peter wiped the sweat from his forehead and sighed. Lin Feng nodded. "Yes, but we cannot take it lightly. The enemy has other bases, and we must find and destroy them as soon as possible." Bruce agreed, we have to be more careful next, but we can't let down our guard. They activated the compass again and continued to look for directions to other experimental bases. Lin Feng was full of determination and confidence. He knew that as long as he persisted, he would be able to completely defeat the enemy, find the truth, and save more people. As night fell, the four of them continued to move forward in the desolate mountainous area. Lin Feng felt hungry. He had consumed a lot of energy recently, but he had not replenished his physical strength properly. The compass in his hand guided them forward, but Lin Feng felt that he was gradually becoming somewhat powerless. We have to find a place to rest and replenish some energy. Lin Feng stopped, with a hint of exhaustion in his tone. Natasha nodded, obviously noticing Lin Feng's condition. You are right, we need to maintain our strength. There is a forest not far ahead, where we can rest temporarily. They quickly walked toward the woods, found a relatively secluded place, and set up a simple camp. Bruce transformed into the Hulk and easily made a few large branches into a simple shelter, while Peter quickly built a bonfire, and the warm firelight illuminated their faces. I'm looking for some wild fruits and food, Natasha said, quickly disappearing into the woods. Lin Feng sat by the bonfire, feeling the warmth of the flames and feeling relaxed. But the hunger that followed made him a little uneasy, and he knew that he needed to maintain sufficient physical strength for the next action. Peter, how are you doing lately? Lin Feng asked, trying to distract himself. Peter scratched his head and smiled, it's okay. Although I have been fighting these days, I feel that I am getting stronger. However, sometimes I feel a little tired. Bruce returned to his human form, sat next to Lin Feng, and handed him a bottle of water. Drinking some water can help you regain some strength. Lin Feng took the water bottle, nodded gratefully, drank a few mouthfuls of cool water, and felt better. Thank you, Bruce. We all need a break. Chapter 46. Nothing happened at all. Soon after, Natasha came back with some wild fruits and food. She distributed the food to everyone, and everyone enjoyed a rare moment of peace. Lin Feng took a bite of the wild fruit, and the sweet juice filled his mouth, making him feel satisfied. These fruits are so delicious, Natasha, you are so awesome. Peter praised with a smile on his face. Natasha smiled slightly, it's just good luck. We need to maintain our strength, the road ahead may be more difficult. Lin Feng nodded in agreement, yes, we must always be vigilant. The direction pointed by the compass is clear, but we don't know what kind of dangers there will be ahead. The woods at night are quiet and mysterious, with only the occasional chirping of insects breaking the tranquility. Lin Feng leaned against the tree trunk, closed his eyes, and tried to relax. Although his heart was full of anxiety and uneasiness, he knew that these emotions could not affect his judgment and actions. In the middle of the night, Lin Feng suddenly felt a strange energy fluctuation. He opened his eyes suddenly and saw the compass needle trembling violently. Everyone, wake up, there's a situation. Lin Feng shouted in a low voice and quickly stood up. Peter and Natasha immediately became alert, and Bruce also transformed into the Hulk, preparing to deal with sudden dangers. The compass needle pointed deep into the woods, and something was obviously approaching. We have to go and take a look, we can't let the enemy strike first. Lin Feng said, condensing a black ball in his hand, ready to fight. They followed the compass's guidance and quickly passed through the woods. A clearing appeared in front, with an ancient altar in the center. The altar emitted a faint blue light, which was obviously some kind of powerful energy source. This is one of the enemy's energy sources. They use this altar to conduct experiments. Natasha whispered, with a trace of nervousness in her eyes. Lin Feng felt a strong attraction, and this energy seemed to be calling him. He stepped forward and reached out to touch the altar. He felt that the energy in his body instantly increased, and his hunger disappeared. This energy is helpful to me, Lin Feng murmured to himself, with a determined light flashing in his eyes, but we cannot let the enemy take advantage of it. Peter and Bruce also stepped forward, feeling the energy fluctuations of the altar. Suddenly, a strong light shot out from the altar, forming an energy shield to prevent them from getting closer. We have to destroy this shield, otherwise we can't destroy the altar. Bruce said, transformed into the Hulk, and punched the shield suddenly. The shield made a screeching sound, but did not break. Lin Feng concentrated, and the black ball in his hand quickly grew in size and finally turned into a strong energy impact, hitting the shield directly. With their joint efforts, the shield finally cracked, and the altar let out a deafening explosion. Strong energy fluctuations impacted the surroundings. Lin Feng and his team were knocked back a few steps, but they finally destroyed the enemy's energy source. We did it, Lin Feng gasped, his heart filled with the joy of victory, but we can't relax yet. Natasha nodded, yes, we still need to move on and find more experimental bases. They activated the compass again and continued to move towards new goals. Lin Feng felt full of energy in his body and his hunger disappeared, which made him full of confidence for the next battle. Lin Feng and his team continued to move forward in the dark night, their hearts filled with complicated emotions. The battle they had just experienced made them feel tired, but the energy in their bodies made Lin Feng feel full of energy. He knows that the next task will be more difficult, but he is ready. They walked along the compass for several hours and finally came to an abandoned castle. The castle looks old, with its outer walls covered with vines and moss, but it exudes a mysterious and dangerous atmosphere. This is where the compass leads, Natasha whispered, her eyes full of vigilance. We have to be careful, there may be a trap here. Lin Feng nodded in agreement, feeling a little nervous. They approached the castle cautiously, trying to find the entrance. Suddenly, a deep sound came from deep inside the castle, followed by a vibration, as if the earth was shaking. It seems there is something unusual here, Bruce said with a frown, obviously sensing the danger. Peter quickly searched around and quickly found a hidden door. He carefully pushed the gate of opening and found a dark corridor inside, with strange symbols carved on the walls on both sides of the corridor. This door leads to the interior of the castle, let's go in. Peter said, taking the lead in walking into the corridor. Lin Feng followed closely behind, praying silently in his heart. He knew that they must find more clues to completely destroy the enemy's plan. Not long after walking, they discovered a huge underground laboratory at the end of the corridor. In the center of the laboratory is a huge machine, with a ball of intense energy suspended on the machine, surrounded by various high-tech equipment. This is their core laboratory, Natasha whispered, a flash of excitement in her eyes. We must destroy this machine. Lin Feng nodded and prepared to take action. Suddenly, a tall figure walked out of the shadows. He was wearing black armor and had cold eyes. He was obviously the leader of the enemy. You dare to break in here, you are really looking for death. The man in black armor sneered, facing the enemy's attack. The two energies collided in the air, erupting into violent vibrations, and the entire laboratory was shaking violently. You can't escape from here, I will finish you off with my own hands. The man in black armor roared and launched another attack. Lin Feng knew that he had no choice but to go all out now. He concentrated all his energy, and the black ball in his hand became bigger and stronger. He felt that the energy in his body was rapidly depleting, but he did not flinch. Natasha, Peter and Bruce also quickly joined the battle, using their respective skills to deal with the enemy. The battle was extremely fierce, and the entire laboratory was shaken to pieces by powerful energy fluctuations. Lin Feng, we have to deal with him quickly, otherwise more enemies will come. Natasha shouted, with a trace of anxiety in her eyes. Lin Feng nodded, feeling nervous in his heart. He knew that they had to end this battle as soon as possible, otherwise the situation would be even more unfavorable. He concentrated all his strength, and the black ball in his hand suddenly burst out with intense light, hitting the man in black armor directly. The man in black armor was hit by the powerful energy, screamed and fell to the ground. Lin Feng and his team quickly stepped forward and prepared to destroy the equipment in the laboratory. Chapter 47. Fight and run away. Hurry up, we have to get out of here. Peter shouted, obviously feeling that more enemies were approaching. They acted quickly and destroyed the core equipment in the laboratory, and the energy balls began to gradually disappear. Lin Feng felt relieved, but he knew that after leaving the laboratory, the four of them returned to a safe place again. Lin Feng looked at the castle in the distance, his heart filled with complex emotions. He knew that although they had destroyed an important experimental base, the enemy's conspiracy was far from over. We have to move on and find other experimental bases. Natasha, Peter and Bruce also agreed. They knew that although this road was full of dangers and unknowns, they could not back down. Every step will be an important step towards their success. After leaving the castle, Lin Feng and his team continued to move forward, filled with complicated emotions. Although they have just destroyed an important experimental base, there are more unknown dangers waiting for them ahead. In the night, the compass needle continued to guide their direction. After several hours of walking, they came to a dense forest. The air in the forest is moist and there is a light mist surrounding it, giving people a mysterious feeling. Lin Feng felt that the energy in his body was gradually recovering, and he felt a sense of peace of mind. Let's take a rest here and adjust ourselves. Natasha suggested, obviously feeling a little tired. Lin Feng nodded in agreement, and they found an open space and stopped to rest temporarily. Bruce turned back into his human form, took out some dry food from his backpack, and distributed it to everyone. Peter arranged some simple alarm devices around to prevent sudden attacks by enemies. Lin Feng leaned under a big tree, closed his eyes, and tried to relax. He felt that the energy in his body was slowly recovering, but at the same time he also felt an inexplicable fatigue. The continuous fighting during this period of time made him physically and mentally exhausted, but he knew that he could not retreat at this time. Just as they were enjoying the rare peace, suddenly a low sound came from the depths of the forest, followed by a slight vibration. Lin Feng opened his eyes suddenly, feeling nervous in his heart. "Everyone, be careful, there's something going on," Lin Feng whispered and quickly stood up. Peter and Natasha also quickly became alert, and Bruce transformed into the Hulk and prepared to fight. As the sound got closer, Lin Feng felt a strange smell permeating the air, as if it was some kind of poisonous gas. "Oh no, it's poison gas." Natasha covered her mouth and nose and quickly backed away. Lin Feng felt dizzy, and the energy in his body seemed to be quickly drained. He knew that a way to detoxify must be found as soon as possible, otherwise they will all be in danger. "We have to get out of here, go quickly," Bruce yelled and quickly led everyone to retreat deep into the forest. They ran all the way, trying to get rid of the poisonous gas. Suddenly, Lin Feng's vision went dark, and his body fell to the ground uncontrollably. Peter and Natasha hurriedly helped him up, but it was obvious that they were also affected by the poisonous gas and became weak. "Lin Feng, hold on," Peter shouted anxiously, his eyes full of worry. Just when they were at their wits' end, a woman in a white robe came from the depths of the forest, holding a small bottle in her hand. She quickly walked to Lin Feng and handed him the pills in the bottle. "Take this detoxification pill quickly to relieve the poisonous gas in your body." The woman's voice was gentle but firm, obviously familiar with this situation. Lin Feng reluctantly opened his eyes, took the detoxification pill, and quickly swallowed it. As the pills took effect, he felt that the poisonous gas in his body was gradually being eliminated, and his body also regained some strength. "Thank you," Lin Feng gasped and said gratefully, "Who are you? Why are you here?" The woman smiled slightly, "My name is Yuying, and I am the guardian of this forest. I feel your breath and know that you need help." Natasha and Peter also took antidote pills, and their bodies gradually regained their strength. They expressed their gratitude to Yuying and were also curious about her identity. "We are looking for the enemy's experimental base. They use this poison gas to conduct experiments. Do you know where their base is?" Lin Feng asked, his eyes full of expectation. Yuying nodded, "I know some information about them. Come with me, I will take you to a safe place, and we can talk in detail." Lin Feng and his team followed Yuying into the depths of the forest. They came to a hidden cave. The interior of the cave was simply decorated but full of warmth. Moon Shadow sat them down and began to tell in detail the information she knew about the enemy. The enemy's experimental bases are scattered in every corner of this forest. They use poison gas to conduct human experiments in an attempt to control human will, Yuying said, with a trace of anger in his eyes. After hearing this, Lin Feng felt a chill in his heart. "We have to stop them and not allow this experiment to continue." Yuying nodded, "Yes, I will help you. These antidote pills can temporarily protect you from the poison gas, but you need to destroy those bases as soon as possible." They discussed it and decided to divide into two groups. Natasha and Peter were responsible for searching and destroying the base's peripheral equipment, while Lin Feng and Bruce directly attacked the core laboratory. "We must act carefully and not give the enemy any chance to react," Lin Feng said firmly, with determination shining in his eyes. As night fell again, Lin Feng and Bruce followed the route guided by the Moon Shadow and headed towards the enemy's core laboratory. Lin Feng felt that the energy in his body was gradually recovering, and his heart was filled with new hope. He knows. Walking in the dark forest, Lin Feng recalled his experiences along the way, and his heart was filled with complex emotions. He knows that every step will be an important step towards their success, and every battle is a symbol of their firm belief and courage. They finally came to a hidden valley, and in the center of the valley was a huge laboratory. The laboratory was brightly lit and was obviously an important base for the enemy. Lin Feng took a deep breath, concentrated his energy, and prepared for the upcoming battle. "Let's go in and solve this problem as soon as possible," Lin Feng whispered, with firmness in his eyes. Lin Feng and Bruce cautiously approached the laboratory and felt a strong energy fluctuation. They knew that the enemy this time might be more powerful than the ones they encountered before. The laboratory is surrounded by high-tech defense devices, but they rely on the antidote pills provided by Yuying to avoid the poisonous gas. "We have to find the control center and destroy these devices," Lin Feng whispered, his eyes full of vigilance. Chapter 48. The Power of Demons. Bruce nodded and prepared to fight. The moment they entered the laboratory, a cold laughter echoed in the air. Lin Feng and Bruce turned around quickly and saw a witch in black robe walking out of the shadows, followed by a mutated scientist. She was tall and had a hint of madness in her eyes. "Welcome, intruder," the witch said with a sneer, waving a wand in her hand, and the surrounding air seemed to freeze. "You are so stupid to dare to come here." Dr. Mutant's voice was hoarse and low, and he exuded a disturbing aura. Lin Feng felt a chill, but he quickly adjusted his mentality and condensed a black ball in his hand, ready to fight. "We will not back down and your plot will not succeed." The witch smiled coldly, suddenly waved her wand, and a strong wave of energy hit Lin Feng. Lin Feng quickly dodged and threw the black ball at the witch, but she deftly avoided the attack. "Your ability is good, but not enough to defeat me." The witch's voice was full of ridicule. Bruce transformed into the Hulk, roared and rushed towards the mutant doctor, and the two sides started a fierce battle. The laboratory was filled with the sound of collisions of energy, and the air was filled with tension. Lin Feng knew that he had to go all out. He concentrated all his energy, and the black ball in his hand became even bigger. Yamato became stronger and suddenly attacked the witch. The witch quickly waved her wand to form an energy barrier, but Lin Feng's black ball hit the barrier and made a deafening explosion, and cracks began to appear in the barrier. "Bruce, hold on," Lin Feng shouted, trying to cheer for his teammates. The Hulk suddenly exerted force and knocked back the mutant doctor a few steps, but the mutant doctor's body recovered quickly, apparently possessing super self-healing ability. He sneered and rushed towards Bruce again, and the two sides started a life and death struggle in the laboratory. Lin Feng continued to concentrate and released more black balls, finally breaking the witch's energy barrier. The witch's expression changed, obviously she did not expect Lin Feng's power to be so powerful. She waved her wand suddenly, trying to launch a stronger attack, but Lin Feng quickly approached and used the energy in her body to form a protective barrier to block the witch's attack. "You can't even think of succeeding." Lin Feng roared angrily and slammed the black ball in his hand at the witch. The black ball burst out with strong energy fluctuations and directly hit the witch. The witch let out a scream and fell to the ground. At the same time, Bruce also seized the opportunity and punched the mutant doctor in the chest. The mutant doctor's body shook violently and finally fell to the ground and never got up again. "We did it," Lin Feng gasped, feeling relieved. Bruce returned to his human form, walked to Lin Feng, and patted his shoulder. "Good job, Lin Feng. We must destroy the equipment here as soon as possible." They quickly found the control center. Lin Feng used the energy in his body to interfere with the operation of the equipment, and Bruce used powerful force to destroy the core device of the laboratory. With a piercing siren, the equipment in the laboratory began to gradually become paralyzed, and the energy balls also disappeared. "Quickly, there could be an explosion here at any time," Lin Feng shouted, leading Bruce to quickly evacuate the laboratory. As soon as they rushed out of the laboratory, there was a violent explosion behind them, and the entire laboratory was instantly engulfed in flames. Lin Feng and Bruce hid behind a rock to avoid the shock wave of the explosion. "Fortunately we evacuated in time, otherwise we would have been in trouble," Bruce gasped, obviously feeling scared. Lin Feng nodded, "Yes, but we cannot take it lightly. The enemy has other bases, and we must continue to move forward." They returned to the temporary camp, where Natasha and Peter were already waiting, obviously worried about their safety. Lin Feng recounted the situation in detail, and everyone was relieved to have successfully destroyed an important experimental base. "Next, we need to find other bases." Peter agreed, "Yes, we cannot give the enemy any breathing space." Lin Feng took out the compass and felt its energy fluctuations again. The needle began to rotate slowly, pointing in a new direction. He was full of determination and confidence, knowing that there were more challenges waiting for them ahead. "We continue to move forward, every step is for the ultimate victory," Lin Feng said firmly, his eyes full of courage and hope. As the night fell, Lin Feng, Bruce, Natasha and Peter embarked on their journey again. The compass needle turned gently in Lin Feng's hand, pointing in a new direction. They know that there are more challenges waiting for them ahead. A few hours later, they entered an abandoned industrial area. Once a prosperous factory, now only dilapidated buildings and overgrown streets remain. There is a metallic smell in the air, which makes people feel depressed. "Something doesn't feel right here," Natasha whispered, with a hint of vigilance in her eyes. "We have to be more careful." Lin Feng nodded in agreement and continued to follow the guidance of the compass. Suddenly, there was the roar of an engine in the sky, and a red and gold figure fell from the sky. It was Iron Man Tony Stark. His arrival made Lin Feng feel a little relieved, but he was also full of doubts. "Tony, why are you here?" Lin Feng asked, with a hint of surprise in his tone. Tony's mask lifted, revealing his signature smile. "I received an emergency signal and knew you needed help. Looks like I arrived just in time." Lin Feng nodded. "Indeed, we are looking for the enemy's experimental base and need to destroy their plan." Tony waved his hand. "Then come with me. I just scanned and found some abnormal energy fluctuations here. This should be the place you are looking for." They followed Iron Man's guidance and came to a hidden underground entrance. There are several armed men patrolling next to the entrance, but they are vulnerable to Iron Man's high-tech equipment. Tony quickly eliminated the guards and opened the underground entrance. "Going quickly, I will be watching outside and will notify you if anything happens," Tony said. Lin Feng, Bruce, Natasha and Peter quickly entered the underground passage. The walls on both sides of the passage are decorated with complex instruments, which are obviously equipment used by the enemy to monitor and protect this base. "We have to move quickly, otherwise the enemy will find us," Natasha reminded in a low voice. They moved forward and soon came to a huge laboratory. In the center of the laboratory is a huge machine, with a ball of energy shining blue light suspended on the machine. Obviously, this is the enemy's core experimental base. Chapter 49. Saber-toothed Tiger. "We must destroy this machine," Lin Feng said firmly, condensing a black ball in his hand. Just as they were preparing to take action, a strong energy wave came from deep in the laboratory, and a man wearing black armor appeared in front of them. His eyes were cold and he was obviously the leader of the enemy. Lin Feng concentrated all his energy, and the black ball in his hand became even bigger. Yamato became stronger and suddenly attacked the man in black armor. The man in black armor quickly waved the weapon in his hand. "Continue to attack, we are almost successful," Peter shouted, quickly releasing spider silk, trying to restrict the enemy's movement. Suddenly, a violent vibration came from the underground and the entire laboratory began to collapse. Lin Feng felt a strong dizziness and fell to the ground uncontrollably. The man in black armor seized the opportunity and suddenly launched a fatal blow to Lin Feng. "Lin Feng, be careful," Natasha and Peter shouted at the same time, but it was too late. At the critical moment, a red and gold figure fell from the sky and stood in front of Lin Feng. Iron Man quickly raised the energy cannon in his hand and fired a strong beam, knocking back the man in black armor. "I'm coming, Lin Feng," Tony shouted, quickly helping Lin Feng up. "Quickly, this place may collapse at any time." Lin Feng felt relieved, but his heart was still filled with tension. He knew that he had to leave here as soon as possible, otherwise everyone would be in danger. Tony led them to evacuate quickly, and the laboratory gradually collapsed behind them. They finally broke out of the underground passage and returned to the surface. Lin Feng breathed heavily and felt relieved, but he also felt that the responsibility on his shoulders was heavier. "Thank you, Tony," Lin Feng said gratefully, his heart full of gratitude. Tony smiled slightly. "You're welcome, we are a team and must help each other." Natasha, Peter and Bruce also expressed their gratitude. They knew that without Iron Man's timely assistance, the situation might have been even worse. Tony nodded in agreement. "Yes, we must seize the time and not give the enemy any chance to breathe." In the dark night, Lin Feng and his team embarked on a journey again, with the pointer in Lin Feng's hand guiding the direction. They know that there are more challenges waiting for them ahead. Although fatigue swept through everyone's body, their will remained firm. After walking for a while, Lin Feng began to feel that the exhaustion in his heart was not only physical, but also a deep emotional depression. He recalled everything along the way, and his heart was filled with complex emotions. He knew he had to persevere, but the loneliness and pressure inside made him feel extremely heavy. They found a safe place to rest in a forest. The bonfire danced slightly in the night, reflecting everyone's faces. Everyone was silent, exhaustion and pressure making everyone look a little heavy. Natasha saw Lin Feng's emotions and asked softly, "Lin Feng, are you okay?" Lin Feng forced a smile. "I'm fine, I'm just a little tired." Tony came over and patted him on the shoulder. "You did a good job, Lin Feng. Without you, we might have failed." Lin Feng glanced at Tony gratefully, but the fatigue in his heart still could not dissipate. He knew that although this road was full of hope, it also put him under too much pressure and responsibility. "Thank you, I will continue to persist," Lin Feng whispered. A trace of determination flashed in his eyes. Peter came over and tried to lighten the atmosphere. "What kind of enemy do you think we will encounter next? I hope there won't be that terrible poisonous gas again. I don't want to be poisoned again." Everyone laughed and the atmosphere became a little more relaxed. Lin Feng felt a little better, but he still couldn't completely get rid of the depressing feeling. Just as they were preparing to rest, a voice suddenly came from deep in the forest. A figure slowly approached, and Yuying appeared in front of them, holding a small bottle in his hand. "You need this." Yuying walked up to Lin Feng and handed him the small bottle. Lin Feng took the bottle and opened it. There were some crystal-clear pills inside. He felt a warm energy emanating from the pills and felt relaxed in his heart. "Thank you, Yuying. These pills are very helpful to us," Lin Feng said gratefully. Yuying smiled slightly. "You are fighting for justice, and this is what I can do for you." Lin Feng nodded, his heart full of gratitude. He knew that with Yuying's help, their chances of winning would be greater. After everyone took the pills, they felt that their physical strength and energy were quickly restored. Lin Feng's mood gradually improved, but the loneliness and pressure in his heart still could not completely dissipate. At night, Lin Feng leaned against a tree trunk, closed his eyes, and tried to relax. But he knew that those emotions in his heart could not be easily eliminated. He thought of his missing parents and the time they had spent together and felt a sting in his heart. Natasha walked up to him and said softly, "Lin Feng, we all know that you have endured a lot, but you are not alone, we are all by your side." Lin Feng opened his eyes and felt warm in his heart when he saw Natasha's concerned eyes. "Thank you, Natasha. I know, but sometimes it feels like I can't handle it." Natasha gently held his hand and said, "We are a team. No matter how many difficulties lie ahead, we will face them together." Lin Feng nodded, feeling that the pressure in his heart was slightly relieved. He knew that he had to move on. In order to find the truth and destroy the enemy's plan, he could not retreat. In the night, everyone gradually fell asleep, and Lin Feng also closed his eyes. But his heart was still full of determination and hope. He knew that although this road was long and difficult, as long as he persisted, he would be able to usher in the dawn of victory. The next morning, Lin Feng and his team set off again. The compass needle continued to guide their way forward. Every step will be an important step towards their success. Every night's battle is a symbol of their firm belief and courage. After walking for a while, they came to an abandoned factory. There was a strange atmosphere permeating the ruins of the factory, and it was obvious that something unusual had happened here. Lin Feng felt uneasy, but he knew he had to move on. "Everyone, be careful, there may be a trap here," Lin Feng reminded in a low voice. They cautiously approached the center of the factory, and suddenly a cold laughter came. A witch in black robe and a mutated scientist appeared in front of them, obviously a new wave of enemy attacks. Chapter 50. Waiting for a better solution. "How dare you come here, you are really looking for death," the witch said with a sneer, waving her wand in her hand, and the surrounding air seemed to freeze. Dr. Mutant stared at them coldly, with a trace of madness in his eyes. "You can't escape from here, this will be your end." The battle broke out again, and Lin Feng and his team went all out to fight fiercely with the witch and the mutant doctor. Everyone exerted all their strength and fought for victory. Lin Feng and his team fought a fierce battle with witches and mutant doctors in an abandoned factory, and the entire factory ruins were shaking. Lin Feng concentrated his energy, condensed the energy in his body into a huge black ball, and suddenly attacked the witch. The witch quickly waved her wand to form an energy barrier, but Lin Feng's black ball broke through the barrier and directly hit the witch. She screamed and fell to the ground. "Lin Feng, be careful," Natasha shouted, and Peter quickly wrapped the mutant doctor's legs with spider silk, temporarily restraining him. Lin Feng looked back and saw Drive. Mutant suddenly exerting force, breaking free from the spider silk and rushing towards him. At the critical moment, Bruce transformed into the Hulk, roared and rushed forward, knocking the mutant doctor to the ground. Lin Feng took the opportunity to release the black ball in his hand again, hitting the mutated doctor directly in the chest. The mutated doctor let out a painful roar and finally fell to the ground. After the battle, Lin Feng and his team were breathing heavily, and there was silence all around. Lin Feng walked to the bodies of the witch and the mutated doctor and breathed a sigh of relief after confirming that they were no longer a threat. "We succeeded," Lin Feng whispered, a trace of relief flashed in his eyes. Natasha and Peter also came over. They looked at the scene in the ruins and felt a burst of complicated emotions in their hearts. Although they were victorious, everyone knew the battle was far from over. "Lin Feng, look at this," Peter said suddenly, pointing to a corner of the ruins. Lin Feng walked over and found an old envelope among a pile of broken documents and equipment. The envelope was covered with dust and blood, but his name could be vaguely seen written on it. "This is..." Lin Feng was shocked, quickly picked up the envelope and opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter. The handwriting was a bit sloppy but still legible. Son, when you read this letter, it means that I can no longer accompany you. I hope you can be strong and face it bravely no matter what difficulties you encounter. What we study is very dangerous, but it is also hopeful. Where? Remember, you are my pride. After Lin Feng finished reading the letter, his eyes were moist and he felt sour in his heart. Although his father has passed away long ago, his teachings and encouragement still echo in Lin Feng's heart. This is the letter left by my father. Lin Feng whispered, with a hint of sobs in his voice. Natasha gently held his hand. Your father must be proud of you, Lin Feng. You have done a very good job. Peter and Bruce also expressed support. They knew how much responsibility and pressure Lin Feng shouldered. Everyone felt a deep resonance and understanding. Thank you, Lin Feng took a deep breath and put the letter away carefully. Let's move on. I know my father wants me to complete this task. They were ready to go again and followed the guidance of the compass towards their new goal. Lin Feng's heart was filled with new hope and determination. He knew that his father's teachings and encouragement would become his motivation to move forward. As they go deeper into the abandoned factory, they discover that there are more secrets here. Suddenly, a secret door opened in front of them, revealing a hidden underground passage. It seems we still have more things to do, Lin Feng said, with determination in his eyes. They carefully entered the underground passage. The walls on both sides of the passage were decorated with various complex instruments and symbols, which were obviously devices used by the enemy to protect the core laboratory. We must find the control center as soon as possible and destroy these devices, Bruce reminded in a low voice. Natasha and Bruce also quickly joined the battle, using their respective skills to deal with the enemy. Lin Feng concentrated all his energy. Lin Feng and his team rested for a while next to the ruins. The battle just now made everyone feel exhausted. The warmth of the bonfire made them relax a little, but Lin Feng's thoughts were still racing rapidly. A thought suddenly flashed through his mind, some hints mentioned in the letters left by his father. He quickly took out the letter from his backpack and carefully recalled every word of his father's words. Some of the symbols and locations mentioned in the letter were somewhat similar to the secret doors and underground laboratories they had just discovered, which made Lin Feng feel a sense of uneasiness and anticipation. I remembered some of the things I mentioned in the letter before, Lin Feng whispered, attracting everyone's attention. This information may be helpful for us to find our next target. Natasha came closer and looked at the letter in Lin Feng's hand carefully. These symbols are indeed somewhat similar to what we saw in the underground passage. Maybe they are some kind of guidance. Peter agreed, we must seize every clue and not let go of any possible information. Lin Feng nodded and decided to interpret the message left by his father more carefully. He combed through the contents of the letter again and found that the letter mentioned an abandoned research institute, which was probably another experimental base of the enemy. We are going to this abandoned research institute next, Lin Feng said firmly. This may be the key to finding the enemy's core laboratory. Everyone quickly geared up and set off, with the compass pointer guiding their direction. Lin Feng was both expecting and a little nervous. He knew that this operation was very important and he had to go all out. A few hours later, they arrived at the abandoned research institute mentioned in the letter. This research institute is hidden in a dense forest and has a dilapidated appearance, but through the broken windows, you can see that some high-tech equipment is still retained inside. Lin Feng felt a strong energy fluctuation, which made him even more convinced that there were important clues here. Let's go in, but be careful, Lin Feng reminded everyone in a low voice. They entered the research institute cautiously, and there was silence all around. Only the sound of footsteps echoed in the empty corridor. Lin Feng led everyone deeper step by step and soon found a secret control room. The equipment in the control room is still running, with various complex data flashing on the screen.